The 5BN provide the ability to predict symptoms as soon as the underlying rhythm of the SBS and the causative correlations are understood. Our practical example: back pain and lumbago, predicted years in advance. Mr. M dealt with the 5BN for many years and came to the following presumption. If I ever manage to reach the black belt in a martial art, I will have back pain for the next 3 weeks, starting the next day, and possibly get lumbago. How did he come to this statement? As a young man, Mr. M was hale and hearty, full of energy, participated in lots of sports and music, and was studying computer science. Suddenly, he experienced pain in his arms, which was discussed in the previous practical part and which would accompany him for the next 3 years. As a result, the foundation of his self-esteem collapsed. He had to give up all his sport and musical hobbies. His studies, which were successful to this point, were also heavily threatened, and it was becoming increasingly painful to navigate keyboard and mouse. Therefore, suddenly his entire professional future was in doubt, so that he now reacted with a further consequence conflict, a so-called central self-devaluation conflict. Here, you feel devalued, broken, incompetent, and worthless, in related to a central theme such as life's work or the ability to manage your life, in this case his studies and professional future. Biologically, one's own value is strongly signaled by an upright posture. In the conflict-active phase, one now bends and makes oneself small, whereby the self-perceived lower value becomes visible to others. Organically, this SBS therefore affects the lumbar spine, which, like all bones, belongs to the new mesoderm. In the conflict-active phase, therefore, there is a function reduction with cell reduction, which is called necrosis. It went unnoticed in this case. In spite of his arm pain, he found opportunities to successfully continue studying during the following months. With various tricks, such as controlling the computer via speech, using a special arm-friendly computer mouse, and programming in groups, at some point during his studies, he faced the crucial 6-month computer science internship which he had dreaded for years. He did not know how to handle this with his aching arms. But even here, there were ways. Exactly at the halfway mark through the internship, he celebrated that evening that he had survived the first half, and that the second half, and thus the end of his studies, were within reach. This huge relief signaled his conflict resolution. In the conflict-resolved phase, lumbar spine tissue is now swollen and inflamed to rebuild the reduced tissue and make it more stable than before, which is presumably the biological meaning of this special program. Even if the process, therefore, is meaningfully designed, the PCLA phase may be associated with severe pain. In this case, he woke the next morning with severe back pain for the first time in his life. With his first bending motion, the swelling pinched a nerve that emerges laterally from his vertebra, resulting in lumbago, i.e., sudden severe pain in the back followed by total immobilization. Since Mr. M did not have a precise knowledge of the new medicine at this time, he perceived this situation as a biological conflict, since the criteria, unexpected, highly acute, dramatic, and isolative, were all met. He now felt devalued, broken, incapable, and worthless yet again, only this time at that precise point on his back, so the conflict content, and thus the newly started SBS, was identical to that which had just been resolved. This time, it was not an abstract situation that was to blame, but a very local, intense pain. This was again a local consequence conflict and kicked off another vicious cycle similar to the one started by the pain in his arms. His feeling was, finally, after years, my health was looking up, when suddenly I'm flat on my back, unable to move, which was a first for me. After a few months, when all seemed well again and his back problems were overcome, the SBS resolved, resulting once more in swelling, inflammation, and pain. So again, a lumbago occurred, which led to another local recurrence, and so the cycle repeated for the next few years. The time period until the resolution, and thus the time between the lumbagos, increased each time, because it took longer and longer until he had the feeling that now my back is really good again, which then is the moment of the conflict resolution and the beginning of the unavoidable pain. During that time, Mr. M had started to study the 5BN. By verifying various symptoms, their accuracy was soon proven without a doubt, so he could now understand the real cause and the process of his back pain and lumbagos. By understanding that in this case the pain is an inescapable resolution symptom and he is not broken in that area, the next recurrence was of significantly lower intensity. And the next time, there was no further recurrence, so the vicious cycle had been stopped, and no more pain occurred in the years that followed. This means that due to his new understanding of the cause of pain, the perception of the situation changed in a way that no more consequential conflicts followed. The criteria, unexpected, highly acute, dramatic, and isolative, were no longer met. In many chronic diseases, this mechanism of local consequence conflicts lies at their root and can often be resolved by a causal understanding alone. But the new experiences with the 5BN have reassured Mr. M even more in this context. In the analysis of this case, he noticed that he might not only have perceived one central self-evaluation conflict because of the endangered future of his career, but probably another one as well, because he had to give up all his sport and musical hobbies as a further consequence of the growing pain in his arms. Especially bad was the inability to continue his karate training, as he had recently passed the brown belt exam and really wanted to intensify his training to earn a black belt, a big goal of his since childhood. As he suspected, this follow-up conflict, though reduced for years, was still active. This was the foundation for the above-mentioned suspicion: if I ever manage to reach the black belt in a martial art, I will have back pain for the next 3 weeks, starting the very next day, and possibly get lumbago. In fact, 11 years after the activation, Mr. M achieved this goal in another martial art. In the evening, he remembered his prediction of years ago and warned his wife that starting tomorrow, he should expect back pain. And so it happened. For the next 2 weeks, he had moderate back pain, 2 vertebrae lower than the other times. After 2 weeks, when the pain was almost gone, he became careless and bent forward awkwardly so that this time the lumbago was worse than ever before. The complete regeneration took another 3 weeks. Although the pain was significantly worse this time than before, there was not a single local recurrence because the reason for the pain was clear and even predicted. To this day, now 3 years on, no further back pain has occurred. Both special programs have now completely run their course.